Why would an entire town casually snack on fried tarantulas? For decades. The answer isn't they're brave or they're weird. It's a trauma story, so dark it rewired what food meant in Cambodia. And once you know it, that spider stops looking like a stunt and starts looking like proof of survival. Right now, in the town of Skuon, about 75 kilometers north of Phnom Penh, street vendors are pulling tarantulas out of plastic bags and dropping them into sizzling oil. These aren't tiny spiders. We're talking Haplopelma albostriatum, a species that spans up to 8 centimeters across. Locals call them aping, and tourists call them absolutely terrifying. You've probably seen videos of people eating weird foods around the world. Bugs, fermented fish, things that still move on the plate. And most of the time the internet treats it like a joke, like it's just shock content. But here's what nobody tells you. There is always a reason, always a history. And Cambodia's tarantula story, it doesn't start at a street market. It starts in one of the most horrific chapters of the 20th century. So before we get to the why, let's make sure you understand what exactly people are eating here, because it's more fascinating than you think. First, the food itself, because honestly, this part surprises most people. Fried tarantulas are seasoned with salt, sugar, and garlic. The legs turn crispy, almost like thin potato chips. The body is soft inside, slightly gooey. According to people who've eaten them, the flavor is surprisingly mild, something between crab and chicken, reportedly with a slightly nutty aftertaste from the cooking oil. The abdomen is the controversial part. It contains a dark paste, a mix of organs, eggs, and sometimes waste matter. Some locals love it, others skip it entirely. Even within Cambodia, opinions differ. But here's the thing that really hits you. A single serving costs about 25 to 50 cents. That's it. And for millions of Cambodians, that price point isn't exotic. It's practical. It's protein. It's survival food that somehow became a cultural identity. And to understand how that transformation happened, you have to go back to the 1970s, to a regime so brutal it nearly erased an entire civilization.
This is the part that most food travel shows skip, because it's uncomfortable. But it's the only part that actually matters. Between 1975 and 1979, the Khmer Rouge, a radical communist regime led by Pol Pot, seized control of Cambodia. Within days of taking Phnom Penh, they forced the entire urban population into the countryside. Millions of people. Doctors, teachers, farmers, children, all sent to labor camps to build what Pol Pot called Year Zero, a complete reset of Cambodian civilization. The conditions were catastrophic. People worked 16-hour days in rice fields. Rations were almost nothing, sometimes just watered-down rice porridge once a day. According to historical records compiled by the Documentation Center of Cambodia, approximately 1.7 to 2.5 million people died during this period, roughly 25% of the entire population, from execution, starvation, disease, and forced labor. Think about that number for 1 second. 1 in 4 Cambodians gone in 4 years. And the survivors, they ate whatever kept them alive. Bark, roots, insects, spiders. Tarantulas were everywhere in the Cambodian jungle. They lived in burrows in the ground. They were large enough to actually provide calories.
And when you are genuinely curious, and when you are genuinely starving, when your children are starving, you don't ask if something looks appetizing. You ask if it will keep you alive. So, Cambodians learned to catch tarantulas. They learned to cook them, and they survived. But here's where this story takes a turn nobody expects. After the Khmer Rouge fell in 1979, Cambodia began the agonizing process of rebuilding. But rebuilding after losing a quarter of your population isn't just about economics or infrastructure. It's about identity. It's about deciding what to carry forward and what to leave behind. And somehow, remarkably, tarantulas came forward. The town of Skuon became the epicenter of what researchers now call trauma food becoming cultural cuisine. Older generations who had survived the Khmer Rouge continued eating tarantulas, not just out of habit, but because abandoning the food felt like abandoning the memory of survival. According to anthropologists who have studied Cambodian food culture, there is a deeply human tendency to attach meaning to foods that carried us through hardship. Think of it this way. Imagine a food that once saved your family's life. Would you just stop eating it the moment times got better? Or would it become something more? Something that represents resilience? Something you teach your children? That's exactly what happened in Cambodia. The tarantula transformed. It went from a desperate act of survival to a symbol of Cambodian toughness. By the 1990s and 2000s, vendors in Skuon were selling them to travelers passing through on Highway 6. Tourists started buying them as a curiosity. Then food journalists wrote about them. Then the internet discovered them. And today, a food born from one of the darkest moments in modern history generates income for hundreds of local vendors and families across Cambodia. But the story doesn't end there, because there's one more layer that makes this even more fascinating. Here's the bigger idea hiding inside this story. And this is what I want you to actually take away from this video. Every food that looks bizarre to outsiders makes complete sense when you understand the context that created it. Every single one. Icelanders ferment shark buried underground for months, because in a land with no trees and brutal winters, that was how you preserved protein without refrigeration.
French Koreans developed intensely spicy kimchi because fermentation with chili paste was the only way to keep vegetables safe through freezing winters before modern storage. And Cambodians eat fried tarantulas because a regime tried to starve them and they refused to die. Weird foods aren't weird to the people who eat them. They are logical. They are historical. They are, in many cases, the reason certain communities exist at all today. And here's one more fact that completely reframes how you see this. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the FAO, approximately 2 billion people worldwide regularly eat insects as part of their diet. 2 billion. That's 25% of the entire human population. In terms of global eating habits, insect consumption isn't the exception. It might actually be closer to the norm. So the next time someone at a dinner table calls another culture's food disgusting, remember Cambodia. Remember that the food on their plate has a story. A real story. One that probably involves more courage and resilience than anything sitting on your plate right now. Cambodia's tarantulas aren't a quirky tourist attraction. They're edible proof that the human will to survive is absolutely unstoppable. So, would you actually try a fried tarantula? Drop your honest answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if this story changed how you see food culture, even slightly, hit subscribe. Because next week, we're uncovering why Peruvians drink beer brewed with human saliva, and the ancient Incan ritual behind it is even more fascinating than it sounds. Don't miss that one.